Hello and welcome to Robin Minds. I am your guest host, Hero Daniels. Ebuka Obi-Uchendu sends his greetings. We're still celebrating Nigeria at 61. In the words of Nigerian musician Timi Dakolo, we are all we have. We will defend our land. We'll still believe in Nigeria and the promise she holds. Despite all our challenges, we're still holding on to that promise of what Nigeria can be. Yes, we will not be blind to all of the challenges that we're facing, from insecurity. Very recently, Dr. Chike Akunyele was shot alongside 7 others in Anambra State. We're experiencing a food crisis in this nation, and we all know that banditry is also on the rise. The President of the Federal Republic, President Muhammadu Buhari, has addressed some of these challenges in his independence speech, but the big question is, are we doing enough? Joining me in the studio to discuss Nigeria at 61, are we optimistic about a better Nigeria? Is a governance and gender development expert, Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome, welcome. How are you feeling?
Well, feeling good, but well, quite confused about where we are and what hope that we have for the country. Given all the things that we've been seeing around the country in the last few months, it's been quite difficult. The killing of Dora Achilles' husband, and plus the COVID and all the banditry, kidnapping, that we've been seeing. So it's quite difficult to assimilate all this and then still, keep faith, in Nigeria, that we're going to get there. Yeah.
I can imagine. It's been 61 years, and we've had different dispensations. We've had the military dispensation. Now we're in the democratic dispensation. If you were to assess our progress so far in terms of scorecard, what would it be?
Well, I started off as a students' union leader. So meaning that while the military dispensation was there, I was part of those who were in the trenches, trying to make sure that we have a country that is better for all of us. I was at the Obafemi Awolowo University there, and I was a students' union leader. And if you compare the sacrifices that we made at that time, thinking that when we are like 50 years old or thereabouts, things should be better for the country. If you sit back and you assess, you see that we still have a very long way to go. And that's why I said, it's to a large extent disheartening, that we're still struggling with what democracy should be, as a country. At 61, yes, we have grown in age, but I am not sure whether it's commensurate with what you would expect that would have, where would have gotten to as a country.
True.
There still seems to be a whole lot of problems in terms of even accountability processes in the country. It looks like a lot of things are going on, but nothing seems to be working effectively. And I think that that's where the dwindling hope comes in. When are we going to get it right? So is it about leadership? Is it about the people? So it's about what? And we don't seem to have any other country to go. So this is all what we have, just as you said, Dakolo said. And so we need to find a way, to address. So the hope there is that we have great people with great potentials. I've seen young people. I also lecture at the University of Lagos, so I know and I see that there's great hope for the people that I see, that I speak to on a daily basis, who are young people, and I also see a lot of things done by, Nigerians across the world. So there is hope. But we need to manage that up in a manner that will be able to achieve, the kind of Nigeria that we want. And I think that's where the challenge is, and that's what we need to address.
Okay, so we're going to speak more about accountability, because you made mention of accountability. And the president made a statement that what he has achieved in the past 6 years, no other administration has ever achieved it, trying to get Nigeria back on track. But we're going to get to the president's speech. Right now, I want us to connect to our Abuja studio. We have Rinsola Abiola, an advocate for gender equality. She'll be joining us in a bit. Hello, Rinsola.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. So our president, centered on a couple of issues. He addressed certain issues that we're facing as a nation, from insecurity down to social media, down to the need for us to be united as a country, and what the federal government is doing about the agitators, that has the agitators in different regions. So what are your thoughts on this president's speech?
First off, regarding the president's comment about his administration doing, what no other administration has done within the time frame, I think that's a comment that would have to be situated within the context of events that followed his emergence. We've had to deal with a global pandemic. We've had to deal with dipping oil prices. These are things that have, necessitated the readjustment of our priorities and ambitions as a nation. Yet, we can also look at initiatives, very ambitious initiatives, like the social investment programs, and commend this administration for what they've done so far. The very aggressive infrastructure investments. We're looking at some things. You mentioned accountability earlier, and well, I think for the first time in a bit, we can actually point to things that our resources are being invested in. And then, of course, there are issues that we still need to deal with. There have been a lot of investments in social issues, like I said earlier. Take the issue of Empower, look at the school feeding programs, the social investment programs, giving stipends to the poorest of the poor. But, there are other issues that we still need to make investments in, although a lot of work is still being done regarding those. Talking about insecurity now, talking about unemployment. These are issues that have been compounded by what's going on at the moment, a number of factors that need to be addressed that are not particularly unique to us as a country, but they've had a lot of impact on the challenges that we're facing. So within that context, I would say that so far, well, I wouldn't rate the administration poorly, but at the same time, there are steps that still need to be taken regarding other things, and I believe that in due course, we'll begin to see better results in those areas.
All right. A follow-up question. You made mention of some of the amazing things that the administration has done. You made mention of, the Empower, feeding of school children. Some people have been of the school of thought that they sort of doubt how the reach of these programs are in terms of implementation. Do you have maybe a bit of statistics as to how far and the reach of the implementation of these programs are?
Well, there are beneficiaries. If there was a delay, to the best of my knowledge, in getting beneficiaries from certain states, I think it was because what needed to be done at the time wasn't based on, putting a database together and getting people on the list. But I believe beneficiaries for the social investment programs, for instance, are drawn from pretty much most states across the country, all over the country. There's the spread, it's gone round. There are Empower beneficiaries all over the country. We've had a number of young people benefit from other programs. Take the Youth Investment Fund, for instance, and a couple of other initiatives introduced by this administration. We also have a number of states doing what they can in their capacity to develop youth potentials, especially. And these are ideas that I believe can be improved upon. There's still a lot of work to be done, like I said earlier.
All right. Thank you so much, Rinsola. I'll get back to you in a bit. I'd like to connect to Mr. Collins Mweke. He's a global affairs analyst and is joining us all the way from Belgium via Zoom. Mr. Collins.
In the restaurant.
Good afternoon to you.
Sister Dalton.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for having me.
All right. So what are your thoughts on our journey so far as a nation?
And she embraced me like she knew me.
Well, I do have some mixed feelings. If I may begin with the summation of, the last speaker from Abuja. Yes, indeed, she was spot on the slight improvements she talked about as a consequence of, some of the initiatives, some of the re-engineering that government has made. And I say this because the latest Human Development Index actually points to the fact that, Nigeria actually made some improvements between 2015 and 2019. But then that still places Nigeria as 161 country out of 189. That is very, very abysmal. Now, it is very, very abysmal if you consider that Nigeria was meant to be the leader in Africa, okay, being the largest, black population in the world. They are supposed to provide leadership. And pendling around the bottom of the ladder is actually not good enough. That's number one. Number two, yes, as nice as those figures may be, and as indeed captured by the last speaker as they may be, the man on the street, does not feel this, slight improvement. So the point you ask yourself is, if it hasn't trickled down to the average Nigerian, what are we talking about? So what we're talking about is that Nigerians are dying they are dying en masse. The poverty level is actually the highest that it was ever in the history of Nigeria, at least in the past 61 years. So we have nothing to jubilate about the slight improvement that still places Nigeria 161 country out of 189. The government has got to roll up its sleeve. The government has, got to deliver on the promise that brought it to power, which is fight corruption to a standstill and put Boko Haram out of business. On both scores, the government has failed and failed woefully. And what we have seen is indeed that these issues are what are actually hampering economic progress. Those are the things that make people feel insecure and completely disenfranchised, in the nation state called Nigeria. Yes, there have been, announcements made, for example, about the infrastructure, presidential developmental infrastructure plan. That is fine, but we are not hearing it for the first time because the president talked about resuscitation. It is not a new initiative. And so I can go on and on about those recycled or announcements of recycling of, policies that existed previously. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't trickle down to the man on the street, Nigeria is still going around in a vicious circle.
Okay, so from what you've said so far, I could pick two words: accountability and implementation. I'm going to get back to you in a bit. I want to quickly speak with Dr. Afolabi. From our last speaker, you could see that he's very concerned about how much of these policies make it down to the common man. So that talks about accountability. How accountable has this government been?
Well, I really share his concerns, and I also want to say that from what Rinsola said in terms of the kind of initiative that this current government had put in place, the social investment and what have you. The truth of the matter is that, and just as the last speaker said, if it's not addressing the major problems of Nigeria, then we are not saying it as such. Because I don't know how we can have an effective social investment processes in this country without any form of data. So you hear people say, we're not sure whether this is happening. We hear people say this is being politicized and, and what have you. So there's a problem with that if we are not addressing it holistically. In countries where they respond to social security, in America, if you have a number, people get to know who you are, what you're doing, whether you are unemployed, whether you need, to be assisted. We can't be addressing the problem, trickle by trickle and think that we can solve it. So we must have a very holistic, perspective into addressing the problem of Nigeria. And that's why the social investment is not working as effectively as it could be. We don't even have data to back it up, that it is effective. So there is a problem, with that. So the question of accountability is also there. I do not see any progress if we don't address some three key issues. And I think that's also one of the reasons why people said, why I feel that the president did not cover a lot of areas that Nigerians will be. How can we be discussing when the doctors are on strike? There's a serious public health problem, and the doctors are not there, to address the problem. So we are not addressing addressing the question of health. So there are issues of accountability around health. The issue of insecurity is also an accountability issue. There's a lot of corrupt practices, and that's why you see explosive bombs entering the country on a daily basis. And we're not asking that right question about how do we then deal with that? It's an accountability issue. What is the process? How are they entering the country? How many routes do we have in this country? Over 800. So what are we doing, to ensure that we have people who can, man and woman, those entries into the country, So there's insecurity from Chad, from Sahel, they come into the country. So what are we doing? I think those are the key issues that we need to address. There's no way we can have social investment if we don't address all these people, all this issue. So the government will see that connection between the problem of the people and also thinking that we can address it, piecemeal, and so we need to be very holistic about it. And if we are not, that means we are not accountable. We are not exemplary. We are not having a leadership that's listening to the people and also trying to address, the problems of the people. There are a lot of concerns for Nigeria. Unemployment is huge. I heard the president talking about 10 minutes. So why didn't we start yesterday? Why are we starting now? And of course, there's a whole lot of work around 2023. So is that what it's all about? So there's a need for us to actually identify our priorities as a country and see in actual fact what do we want to address now, what's our concern, and how do we go about it. And I think that the government of the day is not doing that appropriately.
Thank you very much. We're going to get back to that because you've identified the problem, you've identified the loopholes. I want us to look in depth as to how do we as a people, as a nation, how do the institutions that are in charge of making sure that the leaders are doing what they have to do. How do we strengthen these institutions? How do we as individuals, as citizens, demand accountability? But let me quickly get to Rinsola. So, Rinsola, how would you say the youth's participation has been so far? And for some of our youths that are already in power and are already, doing what they can in different offices, how far have they fared?
So in the last administration, the last assembly, we were able to get the Not Too Young to Run bill to scale through Parliament, and the president assented to it, and that enabled a number of young people to vie for elective office. Now, many of them didn't make it through, but many did benefit from the legislation, not just by running, but also by making it through the election process. And we have a number of young people in the House of Representatives. We have a number of young House of Assembly members across the country. We also have young people in non-elective positions working as special assistants, as aides to elected officials. And I would say that the level of youth participation, it's not bad, it's not abysmal, but we could do better. But in doing better, we also need to look at the hurdles that young people need to scale through to be able to thrive in politics, to be able to run for an election and win. It costs a lot of money. There's the issue of resources. There are internal party issues that need to be resolved. Yeah. There's a lot of work that actually needs to be done from the bottom up. Talking about young people who actually did scale through, I have a number of examples actually across states. There's a young rep from Ondo, Honorable Adefisoye. He's done quite well with, delivering on dividends of democracy to his people, so to speak. We have a number of other young reps from the state. I think Honorable Tunji Ojo done really well with massive developments within their constituencies. We have other young, relatively young legislators from other parts who have been quite accountable, in giving account of their stewardship to their people. And we have others, women politicians who are doing better with connecting with young people. We have young people organizing themselves into movements to better hold our leaders accountable. So I always say that we're not all going to be politicians, but we can all be active citizens. And a number of young people are really stepping up. Even if they're not being politically active, they're being more responsible as citizens in discharging their duties and holding their leaders accountable, in following up, campaigning for voter registration. Yet, we could do better as a country. Nigeria has a large youth population, and students alone make up more than 20% of the voter register, I believe. So if we're able to harness these numbers and actually put them to good use, the the youth bloc alone in the voter register can deliver a presidential candidate if we put our numbers to good use. So I think we need to be more effective with how we organize.
You spoke about youth participation in 2023 and how the youths are forming movements and coming together to make sure that, you know, we have an active citizenry. Speaking about the elections, how important is our participation as youths, and how do we get to the grassroots? Because the truth of the matter is some people are of the school of thought that, you know, especially regarding social media, that sometimes when the youths want to speak up or when they want to voice certain things, that there's a level of censorship, you know, there's a level of clamping down. I've had several reports where people have gone on social media and you see they say certain things or they try to organize certain movements, all in line of active citizenship, and you see that perhaps their bank accounts has been blocked and everything. So how would you sort of encourage those people that are saying that, you know what, we're not going to participate in governments because participating in politics and being an active citizen might actually not make us, you know, might not make us feel safe? So how do we encourage those youths out there that don't feel safe in this country?
Well, I would say that there are many platforms that one could work with, and there are many ways that one can participate. I started out with youth activism, was involved with the politics of the Youth Council for a bit before making the transition to mainstream politics. And I've remained at the intersection of politics and civil society since then. And we have quite a number of young people who equally work in that space. We have our colleagues, counterparts who are not in politics, but then we do engagements and consultations within the political framework within government, and our colleagues do the engagement outside of politics within civil society. Like Not Too Young to Run, for instance, took a lot of cooperation with young people in politics and young people outside of politics within civil society, young people within student movements. And there are actually many ways that a lot of young people can participate. You can join a political party. You can register to vote. Your vote has a lot of power. One vote I think in Sokoto, the election was won or lost by barely 400 votes. Each vote counts. Each vote makes a difference. And one thing I always try to make young people understand, especially those with an interest in politics and organizing, is this. There's a lot of talk about how certain kinds of people maybe have a lot more attention or a lot more access to politicians. But at the end of the day, politics is about numbers. Politicians respect people who vote for them. Politicians respect people who can deliver on votes. And once young people are able to transition from mostly just talking about things that we're not satisfied with to organizing effectively in such a way that we're able to deliver on, say, a set number of votes and actually to be recognized as the power bloc that we actually are and that we have the numbers to be, I think the dynamics of how we interact and how we engage with politics and politicians will change considerably. So I think that's one thing that I believe we should explore. And it's also important to keep in mind that minus organizing for rallies and supporting causes and perhaps coming together occasionally when there are things that we're passionate about, a lot of this is not going to translate to much if we're not channeling that energy to the democratic process and to actually voting. It's very, very important. Because if we come out in large numbers when things happen that we're not satisfied with, but we don't come out in those numbers when it comes to time to vote, if enough of us don't have voters' cards, if enough of us are not engaging the system, if we're not trying to hold our elected officials accountable, it's going to be a big challenge, being taken seriously as a power bloc. And I'm hoping that, there are a number of young people leading the conversation in this regard, and I'm hoping that come 2023, minus just young people coming out to vie for elective office, we also see a sharp increase in the number of young people who actually do vote and not just get PVCs for identification purposes, for instance.
All right, Lorenzola. Well said. I'm going to get back to you on another issue, which is the social media and, of course, the president's comment about the Twitter and how the conditions Twitter needs to meet before the ban is lifted. But I want to connect with Mr. Nweke now. Mr. Nweke?
Yes, I'm here with you.
All right, so you made mention of poverty, and in 2018, we're all aware that Nigeria overtook India as the poverty capital, and not so much has changed. In fact, more people were slipping into poverty by the day. How do you think we can holistically address the issue of poverty? Because trust me, with the current economic situation, nobody really wants to be in that state.
Dr. Abiola actually captured it in her intervention when she talked about a departure from the piecemeal reactive approach to an approach that is strategic and holistic. Now, what we have today is a patchwork of, policies, some of which had been tried and found to be ineffective and ineffectual. And now they are being, exhumed from the graveyard to want to give it a second life. It just doesn't work that way. Governance is actually, predicated on thorough thinking, data, but also serious strategizing, consultation, and all of that. I mean, Rinshola also touched on that when she talked about the fact that we all can be politicians, but there are quite a number of people who are active in the non-state activism area. Those are assets, okay? And those assets in terms of consultations, research work, and all of that, they will be very, very useful. So I believe that Nigeria should consult more. They should have a more proactive approach to, poverty, eradication than what is happening today.
Thank you very much.
Corruption remains is very, very serious issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nweke. Dr. Folabi, in 60 seconds, I wish there was more time. There's so much to discuss. We haven't even talked about other areas and other sectors that, needs discussing. But just in 60 seconds, what is the way forward? Well,
I think we need empowered citizens. Accountability is a two-way thing. It's the supply and the demand side. So we need to have an empowered citizen that can make demand, effectively from the supply side. And that would address a lot of our problem in terms of the kind of leadership that we want, that can inspire, that can model the way. If we have that empowered citizenry, it will help to give us a better democracy, and we can have a better Nigeria. Okay, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Abiola Arinsola, Abiola, and of course, Mr. Collins Nweke. Thank you so much for joining the program.